no one's alone. Like we all struggle. I struggle with things, you know, even as a professional.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Mindset Podcast, episode 8. This is Anthony here with Gabriel Russo, and we have a very special guest today, Dr. Kayla Marmaros.
That's right, and we are super excited to have Dr. K here with us. She is a certified cognitive behavior therapist, and you guys serve children, young adults, adolescents, and you just opened up, not too long ago, your own company, Pillar Mind and Behavior. So can you just tell us a little bit about that and how you got into that?
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks first for having me here.
Of course.
I'm very excited to be here. So I started Pillar Mind and Behavior in October, so it's fairly new. It's just me, actually, for right now. So located in Coral Gables, Florida. We do serve the psychological needs of children, teens, and young adults. And just working with a lot of different emotional and behavioral issues that kind of come forth. That could be kind of everyday challenges to psychological diagnoses as well. So kind of ranges on a spectrum.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So what tips do you have for our viewers, right? Our demographic are young men, young women in their 20s, mid-20s. What tips do you have for them to avoid falling into depression, anxiety, which are very prevalent and big factors now as we're in high school, college, and experiencing the work life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Very prevalent, as you say, and I see a lot of that just with pressure in society, just work being fast-paced. I think the first most important thing to kind of distinguish is, as humans, we kind of all have those times when we're feeling down or anxious, right? That's pretty common, versus kind of clinical depression or clinical anxiety. And what that means is, there's a difference between the everyday kind of ups and downs versus a diagnosis, which is really marked by how much it impairs our day-to-day functioning. So, if we're not able to get out of bed in the morning, we can't sustain relationships, things that are kind of really getting in the way of day-to-day life, that's when it's kind of a more severe diagnosis. With that being said, there's definitely tips and kind of preventative, if you will, but more so just things to do not to exacerbate that depression or anxiety. And so I would say number one for me, from what I've seen and what I've seen really be helpful, is just talking and opening up. And I think today in society, we've done a really good job about talking about mental health more and kind of stigma. But when it comes to ourselves reaching out for help, I think that's still a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I would say, if you can't do that, and that's fine for now, talk to a friend, talk to a family member. If you can't do that, write out your thoughts, right?
Yep.
Something just to kind of get out what's weighing you down inside of you. There's lots of research that shows when we avoid and we kind of bottle up, it can make things a lot worse.
Yeah, and I think the reason we bottle up is because we feel like we're alone. Like nobody else has these issues that we're going through. Like you think it's just you. Like, why am I weird? Why am I being this way?
Of course.
So you don't want to share it. But once you share it and you let people know, you write it out, as you said, you realize that so many more people, millions of people, have the same issues you're having.
Yeah, and what's good about that is, like, if you were to share your experiences, your thoughts, it might encourage someone else to do the same. It's like a domino effect,
Yeah.
So it's super important what you're doing, trying to help and bring that out of people, because it's, like you said, people feel alone sometimes, and we just need to help encourage them, share their experiences.
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem, especially the epidemic with social media, right? Like you had mentioned, we're comparing ourselves to others. We're seeing all these wonderful things that people are posting. We feel more alone. We're like, wait, that's not how my life is,
Right.
So, which is really a false facade in some regards, as we know. So
yeah, that's actually funny you say that, because one of our questions that we were thinking of was just like, especially with social media and everything that's been going on, the comparison game, like how everything is. Would you say, with your expertise, do you think social media, not necessarily is in charge, but does it play a role in, getting into depression or anxiety nowadays in young adults?
Yeah, that's also a really good question, and I think it's kind of one of those topics of conversations that can be debated in some ways. I think there's some positives to it if we're using it the right way, right? Just connection and kind of sharing with others and kind of relatedness and connecting with other people. I think if we're using it in a way where it's kind of what is this person doing, and how is that compared to my life, and even, you know, we're comparing a lot with what we look like. That can be damaging, that can be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the social media, what it is a highlight reel, right? Nobody posts the negative stuff on social media, how bad your day's going. Like, all you post on social media is the highlight of your life. So all I'm seeing is everybody's highlights. And then I look at, like exactly what you're saying. So it's interesting how social media now has such a prominent factor in everyday life of everybody. You know, you got to be careful with that and balance it well, right? So what things can we do to keep our minds healthy, right? I think that the most important asset that we have are our minds, like by far, no matter what, it's our minds. So what do you think, how do you think we can keep our minds healthy?
Yeah, that's a loaded question and a good question. I mean, there's so many different things. I think that different people, kind of different thing works for everyone. But I think first starting out, and we already went over this, but just sharing, talking, not isolating yourself, not keeping to yourself when something pops up. Like we said, whether that's writing it down, whatever works for you. Healthy lifestyle, so healthy choices. This doesn't mean, I have to be on a vegan, gluten-free diet. You know what I mean? You don't need to be following all the fads, but just in moderation, making healthy choices for yourself. I'm not just talking about food, I'm talking about friendships, relationships, right? We want to steer away from those toxic relationships. And just once in a while, stop and ask ourselves, like, how am I feeling? Checking in with yourself, right? We don't do that enough. We're kind of always giving to other people, trying to please other people, trying to be good at our job. But what about us, right? You know, we're kind of the foundation for that. So we need to take a step back and check in with ourselves.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I feel like a lot of people, even myself included, we might take for granted mental health. It's mental health, so we only think of, like, you know, what's going on in our mind, but it also takes part, you know, our exercise routines, our food intake, our diet. Like, there's so much that goes into having a healthy mindset.
Right, and even if you don't like to exercise, right? Because sometimes when I do these podcasts or interviews, it sounds so simple to say exercise, eat healthy, and for some people that's just not their thing. Just going outside for a walk, getting some fresh air, so finding a way to kind of implement those things and what works for you.
Yeah, you know, about a year ago, I'd say, I started listening. So on my way to school, right, I went to St. Brendan, and I live in West Kendall, so it's a pretty long drive, about 30 minutes. I started listening, instead of listening to music, I started listening to podcasts of like Eric Thomas, Gary Vee. So these are inspirational people, right? And it really changed my life, honestly. You know, listening to positivity, you know, what goes in my ears, having it be good stuff instead of songs or negative stuff on, like, how many people died last week or negative things like that. And that really did affect me really in a positive way, because I'd get to school and I'd be happy at 7:30 in the morning, and everybody's like, why are you so happy? Like,
that really got you going.
It really got me going. It really got me going, and that's something that I've suggested to my friends to, like, man, like, listen to positive stuff in the morning. It really helps.
That's such a good point, and that's an example of what works for you, right? And even if a podcast doesn't work for someone, I think what we're getting at is that positivity and positive self-talk. And I think that that's overlooked a lot as well. We don't realize all the thoughts that we have in our head. There's a million a minute, and oftentimes when we are anxious or depressed, they're more negative, right? And so we need to be mindful of what we're saying to ourselves. And how that kind of affects our day. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, leading up to this podcast, I did some research. I looked at some statistics, and this is insane to me. The leading cause of death for young adults is suicide. Is suicide. I don't know the exact number. I don't know if you know it, but it's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It has, like, shifted a bit. Most people would think that it's like teens and stuff, and now they're kind of looking at more adults now. So
because I feel like, especially, you know, older generations, they might, you know, be feeling, I need to suck it up, you know, in order to go on with my life. But I think now this generation, we're doing a better job of, you know, mental health, share, you know, get your word out. I feel like older generations, they were like the tough ones. Like, they didn't want to share their experiences, they didn't want to share their emotions, they didn't want to be seen as weak, you know. So I think we're definitely doing a better job of, you know, encouraging others to, you know, get on a podcast and just share their experiences, or your journal, or do something. Because I feel like, like you said, even in more adults nowadays, because I feel like they're getting encouraged by the younger ones to share their story.
Absolutely. You know? I think it's cathartic in and of itself just to share whatever that is, or listen to a podcast, listen to someone else's story. I think what's interesting is in therapy, which we can easily also do outside of therapy as well, is as I was saying, look at those negative thoughts, because oftentimes with anxiety and depression, we call them cognitive distortions. They're distorted in some way. Whether it's black and white thinking or something we call catastrophizing, where we think this is going to be the absolute worst event and everyone's going to hate me. That's distorted in some way. And so when we can look at that and say, that's not necessarily true, that's going to play then on our feelings and our behaviors. It kind of creates a vicious cycle. So for me in therapy, I start a lot with the thinking process and thinking patterns that are often distorted when we're feeling anxious or depressed.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really
That's interesting.
interesting.
And we're both we're all entrepreneurs. We're all business-minded people, and so are our viewers and listeners. Is there such thing as a burnout?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because we're going 100 miles a day,
Yes.
100 miles per hour every single day. We're on meetings, phone calls, like we're nonstop as entrepreneurs. Is there such thing as a burnout?
Yes. I mean, I would think even more so in today's day and age than ever. I don't know statistics or research for that. I do know burnout is a very real thing. There is a lot of research out there that says in the healthcare profession, it's very prevalent. You're, kind of giving yourself all the time, taking care of others. Your empathy levels are really high, which can kind of burn you out. But it absolutely exists within other industries, and that just is all the work that we're putting in. There is a misconception that burnout is just working too hard. It's also a lot. It depends what kind of environment you're in and what culture you're in. If you're working for someone and there's not clear expectations of the job, so there's a lot of different factors that kind of culminate into what creates burnout. And a lot of the consequences of burnout kind of mimics depression in some ways, right? So loss of motivation, exhaustion, fatigue, feeling depressed, right? Kind of like not even wanting to get up for work. And I know I can speak from healthcare when clinicians are feeling burnt out, what happens is they actually start to kind of avoid and take a step back, and that's not good with clients, right? You want to be there for your clients. So I could imagine in other industries it's really similar. You're kind of just shut down in many ways.
Yeah, because we still want to be high performing. Whenever we're with clients or whatever the case may be, we still want to be at our maximum potential.
Of course.
So what do you recommend when we're feeling a little burnt out? Is it as simple as a day off, or is it like a vacation? How long?
Burnout is kind of like a slowly creeping thing, and then all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, I'm not good, right? Like, this isn't good. What I would recommend is boundaries, strong. So I work a lot with clients on boundaries from work and from home, right? And not taking that stuff home, as hard as that is, whether that's mentally not taking that stuff home or physically bringing our work home and working for hours throughout the night, kind of keeping that at work. So I like to kind of make time for you, self-care, away from work. And again, like I said, I know we're kind of all entrepreneurs, but people that are working for people, making sure you do have clear expectations at work. Anything that's bothering you, address that with your boss or whoever you're working for. But I would say self-care, really taking that time for yourself outside of work, whether that's, people are into meditation, breathing techniques, taking a trip. But one time, no, I would do that kind of routinely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially in the business world, like people are always talking, hustle, grind, work, you don't have a day off type of thing. And I feel like something that I've learned recently is a lot of people strive to be first, but sometimes, like me, I always tell myself I'd rather be best than first, so whether that takes you 5 years, 10 years, if you need to take a day off to get, yourself some rest, get your mind right where it's supposed to be. I feel like a lot of people have the mentality that they want to be first at everything. They're trying to play, catch up, and they want to be beating everybody, and that might, get them to exhaust themselves and overwork themselves in some ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the end, what is that doing? It's like, we want to be best, we want to be first, but it's counterproductive.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it goes back to mental health. Like, you can't burn yourself out and be, super tired that you can't perform anymore. You got to take care of your body and your mind.
Exactly.
And your mind too.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing with us what's your favorite part of your job?
Oh, I love it so much. It's rewarding. I think that's my favorite part. I think that it's also the opposite. Like, sometimes you have difficult cases that you kind of really are, working so hard yourself to hope and try to get that client in a better place. And that's when I have to take a step back and realize that I don't have magic tricks, you know, and so it's just about being there with the client. I do a lot of evidence-based therapy that I know has worked, so it's collaborating with the client and understanding that it's work on their end as well. But the rewarding part for sure is the best part, when you kind of see strides being made and you see that person feeling better.
And doing better.
Yeah, and doing better.
Essentially, you're changing their life.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's awesome. That's a great job to have, man.
Definitely. And
I like to give them credit too, more so than me. Like, I really like to give them those props. You showed up, you put in the energy, you put in, you know.
Because that's half the battle, you know, acknowledging, you know, that you have, you know, some type of issue or that you need to, you know, seek therapy. That's half the battle. So definitely give credit where credit is due.
For sure.
But yeah, like you were saying, like you're human too. You know, like you're the ones, you know, treating your clients and everything, but you might need a day, a day off to, you know, to yourself, you know, to recollect and, you know, just get your mind where it needs to be. To wrap things up, I know we already said it before, but we just want to make sure that our viewers and our listeners know that they're not alone with whatever they're dealing with. That there are millions and millions of people out there dealing with exactly what they're dealing with, and it's just so important that we have, you know, a professional with us today, like you, like that, and there's millions like you that can, you know, give that therapy, that they can reach out to you and, you know, get their problems off their chest if they just need to talk to somebody, you know. And we'll definitely share your information, your number, your website, so, you know, our viewers and our listeners who are dealing with any type of depression, anxiety, they can reach out to you. But we do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on our podcast. This is such, like, I think this is the best one yet, honestly. It was,
and having you on was priority, because our philosophy, our mission statement of mindset, of having a healthy mindset, it correlates exactly with your profession.
Yeah, it's right.
We're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
So we definitely wanted to have you on, and we're so thankful for you to reaching out to us and have you on. I mean, it's priority, like I said, to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I think the closing message, no one's alone. Like, we all struggle. I struggle with things, you know, even as a professional. So that's the message that's, you know, I want to get out there personally. And so I want it to become kind of a regular thing, like going to the doctor when we have a cold, right?
Exactly.
You know, just...
make mental health normal again.
Yeah.
Like, it's a normal thing. Just let's talk about it. It doesn't have to be something that's, like, shady, nobody wants to talk about. Like, it's perfectly normal to talk about these things. And that's our mission. That's all of our missions, to do that.
Absolutely.